Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 160, The Future. Hey, doofus. You're okay. Sonny reacted after a second or two, raising his head and staring at Effie with empty eyes. Why, yeah. I'm fine. Just thinking about stuff. Effie gave him a strange look, then shrugged and turned away. Everyone was too busy to pay him any attention. Not that anyone ever did. Left alone, Sonny staggered and slowly lowered himself to the ground. In his mind, one phrase was repeating itself, over and over, growing louder and louder with each second. A woman with a bronze spear drowning in a tide of monster. A woman with a bronze spear. This was a part of the vision that Cassie had seen back at the beginning of their journey, on the night they had spent atop the giant statue of a headless knight. The one that was so harrowing that she had almost jumped into the dark waters of the cursed sea just to run away from her terror. It was also the key that connected every little piece of information that Sonny knew into one cohesive picture and let him understand the true meaning of the terrifying vision. He shuddered, remembering what Cassie had told them on that dark night in stark detail. I saw the human castle again. Only this time, it was at night. There was a lonely star burning in the black skies, and under its light, the castle was suddenly consumed by fire, with rivers of blood flowing down its halls. I saw a corpse in a golden armor sitting on a throne, a woman with a bronze spear drowning in a tide of monsters, an archer trying to pierce the falling sky with his arrows. All that time, Sonny was sure, for some reason, that Cassie saw the cataclysm that had devoured this land and turned it into a desolate hell, creating the Forgotten Shore. The first part of the vision was certainly referring to how the curse of the all-consuming darkness had broken free from its 7 seals. So he had just assumed that the other parts of the vision spoke about the past, too, but Effie's spear gave him an epiphany, a terrible revelation that he had been wrong all this time. That the apocalyptic images Cassie had described were not of the past, but of the future. Their future. Trembling, Sonny raised his head and glanced at Nephi's, who was using her powers to heal the wounded hunters, her ivory face contorted in a painful grimace. His eyes were wide and full of disbelief. It was also clear, she was the lonely star that burned in the dark skies above the bright castle, bringing with it fire and rivers of blood. After all, her name was Changing Star. Or, depending on the runes used to write it, Star of Misfortune, the Star of Ruin. Sonny spent so much time fearing what Gunlog was going to do with Nephi's, but he should have been scared of what she was going to do to him, instead. A corpse in a golden armor sitting on a throne. Why hadn't he realized the truth after seeing the Bright Lord for the first time? It was him. Gunlog was the corpse in Cassie's vision, Effie was the woman drowning in the sea of monsters. The archer, Sonny didn't know yet, but he was sure that they would meet soon, maybe only to die together. He had always known that Nephi's was guided by some mysterious, overwhelming goal. He didn't know what that goal was, but it was certainly not here, on the Forgotten Shore. To achieve it, Changing Star had to find a way to return to the real world. That's why she had always been so unwavering and relentless in her ambition to move forward, overcome any obstacle, endure any pain. At times, it even seemed as though her conviction was more akin to an obsession. Nephi's was willing to do anything to fulfill her dream. The comforting words she had told him on their first day in the dark city suddenly resounded in his mind. Only now, there was another, colder, and much darker meaning hiding beneath their surface. We will find a way to return. No matter what has to be done, we will. No matter what has to be done, there was only one way to leave the Forgotten Shore, and it lay in the Crimson Spire. No sleeper could ever hope to reach that gateway in one piece. They would need an army to even try. Maybe then, walking on corpses, 1 or 2 survivors would be able to escape from this cursed place. But Nephi's didn't have an army yet. To gather one, she would need to kill Gunlog, usurp his power and eliminate all opposition, drowning the bright castle in blood. Only then would she be able to rally every single sleeper left in the dark city and lure them into following her on a suicidal crusade. Knowing all too well that most of them would die because of it. No sane person would follow her. They won't. Right. Sonny remembered the faces of the young men and women that had become part of their group in the last few weeks. The strange light of hope, or maybe faith, burning in their eyes. The almost religious reverence they felt toward Nephi's. No, not Nephi's. Toward Changing Star of the Immortal Flame Clan, their personal angel. Were they sane, still? Finally, he understood every part of Nef's plan. Looking at the beautiful young woman with silver hair, Sonny shivered, and then There was the last part of the prophecy. On their way back, Sonny felt as though he was in a feverish dream. The magnitude of the revelation was too much for him. His mind felt weak, unsteady, and on the verge of breaking apart. He had never experienced such a deep feeling of shock. It was as though the very core of his being was violently shaken. He wasn't equipped with the right tools to cope with it. It felt as if he was on the verge of losing it. Sonny was truly horrified. Don't waste time trying to deal with your emotions. This is not the right time for feelings. You need to figure out how all of this affects you personally, and what you need to do to turn things to your advantage. After all, what was there to be scared of? That many people would die. What did their lives and deaths have to do with him? Yes. As long as he was the one left standing in the end, this whole thing might actually turn out to be beneficial. Hadn't he spent the last weeks being afraid of what Gunnlog was going to do to them? Well, now he knew that Gunnlog was going to end up as a corpse. Problem solved. Wasn't he crushed by the news that he would spend the rest of his life in this odious hell? Well, now that wasn't a certainty anymore. That last part of the prophecy, everything was well. Better than ever, and yet, no matter how much Sonny was trying to be rational, he just couldn't help but be filled with terror. In the crimson light of sunset, he found a reason to leave the lodge and walk to the edge of the stone platform. No one really cared that much about his whereabouts, so it wasn't hard to disappear for a while. No one noticed that something was bothering Sonny, either. They were all accustomed to his moody behavior, anyway. Only Cassie seemed to have picked up on something, and Castor, who pretended to be carefree, but actually had a habit of watching anyone close to Nephi's like a hawk. The bastard. Reaching the very end of the stone platform, Sonny turned around and looked at the outer settlement and the magnificent castle towering above it, with hundreds of sleepers rushing to find shelter before the coming of night. A cold and harrowing feeling gripped his heart. All these people are going to die. Neph was going to kill them. Was he willing to help her do it? For some reason, Sonny wanted to laugh. This whole situation was so sick and appalling that it was almost ridiculous. He was never an altruistic type, really. More than that, he always prided himself on being a cynical, selfish, and vicious person. But this was too much even for him. Grabbing his head, Sonny moaned, "What am I going to do?" At that moment, the sound of steps suddenly attracted his attention. A gaunt figure appeared from the slum and walked toward him. Sonny frowned. "Oh, right. That guy, I have completely forgotten about him." Harper stopped a few paces away and smiled timidly. "Sunless. Can we talk?" Chapter 161, Rubicon. Harper stared at him with that pathetic timid smile frozen on his lips. In his eyes, there was fake friendliness, worry, and desperation. For some reason, Sonny felt a violent urge to erase the smile of his face. "You scum." In his rattled state, he was having trouble controlling his emotions. Something must have shown on his face, because Harper suddenly blinked and took a step back. But in the end, the desire to be allowed back into the bright castle won over his caution. He forced himself to stay still, hesitated for a few moments, and said, I wanted to thank you for inviting me into your home this morning." Sonny looked at the gaunt young man. In the twilight of dusk, his pale face was hidden in deep shadows. Finally, he answered, "Yeah. We can talk." "Think, Sonny, think." But his mind was refusing to obey. Most of it was drowning in the sea of cold terror that had been summoned by the revelation of the future. What little remained was utterly disoriented. Sonny raised one hand and rubbed his face. "He's a spy. He's here to make it easier for Gunnlog to kill us. What should be done?" In the morning. Yes, back before everything changed, Sonny had seen Harper reporting to one of the guards. He wanted to give the cowardly young man a beating and throw him out of the lodge. But that would be a wrong decision. The best thing to do was not to expose the unfortunate spy, but to feign ignorance and feed him false information. Yeah. That was the optimal way to deal with moles. As an aspiring spy himself, Sonny knew these things well. But would he even able to deceive Harper? By accident, the failed informant had chosen a perfect person as his mark. Sonny knew a lot of secrets and was incapable of lying. But he was also a master of deception. So. Sunless. Sonny flinched and glanced at the gaunt young man. "Sorry. I'm a bit out of sorts after today's hunt." you wanted to talk. Reassured, Harper smiled again. You see, I wanted to thank you for everything that you had done for me, and for all the people here in the settlement. When I left the castle, I brought a very special item with me. I thought of sharing it with you. Sunny frowned. A special item. I should see what his plan is exactly, feed him a couple of little truths along with the lies, and then report to Neff in the morning. Right. Harper, meanwhile, was nodding energetically. It's a bottle of liquor. Every month, a few are sold by the artisans working in the garden. Getting one is very hard, but I was lucky. Would you like to come and try? My hut is nearby. Sunny got distracted for a few moments, but then forced Hismel to concentrate. What was Harper talking about? Artisans, liquor, luck. Why not? Giving Harper a nod, he gestured for the young man to lead the way and followed. As they passed other slum dwellers on their way to Harper's hovel, Sunny couldn't help but feel like they were surrounded by walking corpses. Most of these people were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. But he did. The weight of this knowledge was slowly crushing him. Harper's small hut was even more pathetic than the other hovels in the slum. It was crudely constructed out of rotting pieces of wood, with plenty of cracks to let the cold wind in. Inside, there was nothing except for a pile of seaweed thatch that served as a flimsy mattress and a low wooden table. Sunny could understand why the gaunt sleeper was so desperate to return to the castle. At least there was a door. Once inside, Harper looked around with embarrassment and invited Sunny to sit on the floor in front of the table. Then, he dug a glass jar from beneath the seaweed and placed it in front of him like a rare treasure. Producing a crude iron knife from somewhere, Harper then opened the wax seal of the jar, placed the knife on the table, and poured a milky white liquid into a chipped clay cup. Here. He handed the cup to Sunny and smiled. Sunny received it and smelled the strange liquor. He remembered many people in the outskirts who had drowned themselves in the bottle or killed themselves with cheap stimulants and drugs. Luckily, he was always too paranoid to allow anything to alter his mental state. Plus, for a long time, he couldn't allow himself to die before accomplishing a certain thing. That's why Sunny was not too familiar with alcohol. Bringing the cup to his lips, he held his breath and downed it in one go. A pleasant warmth immediately spread through his body, bringing with it a bit of sweet solace. I can see the appeal. It wasn't too bad, really. Harper hurriedly refilled the cup and asked, I heard about the latest hunt. By gods, you have survived an encounter with a spire messenger. That must have been horrible. Sunny lingered for a bit, then shrugged. I just stood at the back. The gaunt young man shook his head. Still. You are incredible. I hear that you have been with Lady Changing Star from the very beginning, surviving more than 2 months in the labyrinth. Is this true? He was a really bad actor. Even if Sunny didn't know that Harper was a spy already, he would have sensed something strange at this point. But it was easy to pretend not to notice anything. Rats like me will tell you everything as long as you show them a tiny bit of respect, huh? Flushed because of the liquor, Sunny slowly smiled. Oh. Yes. In fact, if it wasn't for me, she would have been long dead. Do you know how many times I saved her life? This part was entirely planned, aimed to create a false sense that Harper's plan to use pettiness and jealousy to loosen his tongue worked. However, the next words came out of Sunny's mouth on their own. Gritting his teeth, he suddenly paled and whispered, and for what? For this. This wasn't supposed to happen. How did this happen? Then, Sunny grabbed his head and forced out a dark laugh. This is bad. What am I even saying? Mistaking his terror for the sign of the liquor doing its job, Harper got a little braver. You must have fought side by side with Lady Nephi's a lot. Sunny lowered his head, then shrugged. Yeah. The gaunt young man hesitated for a few moments, then cautiously asked, so? You must have seen her aspect ability. Learn your enemy's ability, learn their flaw, learn their vices. That's how you kill them. Staring at Harper, Sunny suddenly remembered his first battle after meeting Nephi's. Back then, she asked him if he had ever dissected a dead carapace scavenger to learn its weaknesses. That's what the cowardly sleeper was doing right now. Dissecting them. Even though they weren't dead. Yet. Sure. It can be used to heal. Harper's eyes gleamed. So she's a healer. Of course. Such an ability suits Lady Changing Star very well. Everyone knows that she's an angel. Good. His first goal was achieved. Sunny had successfully created a misunderstanding, leading Harper to believe that Neff's aspect was limited to healing. There had to be other spies in the slum, of course. With them collaborating on that statement by recounting how she had healed the wounded hunters today, Gunlog and his people would most likely believe that Changing Star had no offensive ability. Who would ever assume that her flames could both heal and destroy? Harper, meanwhile, was pouring more liquor into the cup. By the way, I always wanted to ask. Do you know how Lady Nephi's received her true name? Maybe because of his terrible state of mind, or maybe because of the liquor, or maybe simply because of a momentary lapse of judgment. Sunny didn't think his next words through well enough before answering, probably the same way I did. Then, he froze. Curse you. He was so preoccupied with creating a false image of Neff in Harper's mind that, for a second, he had forgotten to keep his own true identity a secret. Stupid. 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 Not letting the panic show on his face, Sunny tried to salvage the situation by throwing his head back and laughing, creating an impression that his last statement was a joke. Luckily, Harper seemed to believe him. He laughed, too, and then glanced at Sunny with humorous sparks in his eyes. However, his next words sent Sunny into a cold embrace of horror. It was as though the gates of hell opened right beneath his feet. Wishing to play along, the gaunt young man grinned and said jokingly, "Oh. Of course, Lord Sunless. What is your true name then?" Sunny stared at him, the smile frozen on his face. Think. Think. How do you get out of this? But there was no way out, at least none that he could see. He was caught. The familiar pressure appeared in his mind. Slowly, Sunny became deathly pale. Harper was still grinning, waiting for the answer. His face was gaunt, tired, and full of both fear and desperate hope. He was just a weak, pitiful kid, after all. The pressure was replaced by blinding pain, sending a tremble running through Sunny's body. Why did he have to ask that question? But it was too late. What happened couldn't be changed. Like a cornered beast, Sunny could think of only one thing. Harper finally sensed that something was wrong. His eyes widened. Sunday, how to survive. Just a second before the pain overwhelmed his limits and forced out an answer, Sunny suddenly leaned forward, picked up the crude iron knife, and stabbed it through the poor young man's heart. Chapter 162, Lost from Light. Pushing the knife into Harper's weak body, Sunny lunged forward. The flimsy wooden table flew aside and shattered into splinters once it hit the wall. With his other hand, he violently grabbed the young man's face and pressed him onto the floor, making sure that no sound would escape from his lips. Harper's wide eyes were full of pain and terror, staring at Sunny with a silent, but deafening question. Why? Feeling hot blood streaming down his hand, Sunny finally let the pain of the flaw overwhelm him. His whisper was hoarse and barely audible, lost from light. I am lost. Lost from light. Harper's trembling fingers found his face and smeared it with blood, which then mixed with tears. He weakly tried to push Sunny away, but there was no strength in his arms anymore. Biting his lips hard enough to break the skin, Sunny held the gaunt young man down and twisted the knife, praying for all of this to be over soon. Don't look at me. Please, don't look at me. Finally, Harper's terrified, accusing eyes grew still and lightless. Sunny could feel the beating of his heart stop through the thin fabric of the young man's robe. Making sure that Harper was, indeed, dead, he finally let go of the knife and crawled away. Oh, gods. As though summoned by these words, the voice of the spell whispered into his ear, contorted in a painful spasm. Sunny bent over and violently threw up. Then he weakly fell on the floor and tried to wipe his face, only to realize that he was spreading blood all over it. I killed him. I just killed a real human. A strange stillness took hold of Sunny. Sitting on the cold stones, he stared at the corpse of the young man that he had just killed and struggled to form a cohesive thought. After a while, he finally succeeded. Too much. Oh, this is too much. All of this was too much for him. Why did he have to go through all of this? The slave caravan, the forgotten shore, Changing Star, and now Harper. What sin had he committed to have to go through this nightmare? Was he actually already dead, and imprisoned in the depths of hell? Bullshit. He deserved it. Sonny gritted his teeth and forced himself to concentrate on that thought. Why do you even feel guilty? The bastard was going to sell you out to Gunlog. He knew that he was helping to kill you. And not just you alone. Neff, too. And Cassie. But no matter how hard he tried to convince himself that he had the right to kill Harper, deep down, he could not accept it. There were a million ways to deal with the timid, pitiful spy. No. There was another reason. Come on now. There's no one else here. Why don't you be honest with yourself, for once? Just admit it. Don't you dare become a hypocrite. Sonny grimaced and ground his teeth against each other. Say it. Reluctantly, he opened his mouth and whispered, I killed him because I wanted to survive. I killed him. Because it was easy. And just like that, he suddenly felt better. What's the big deal? He was already a murderer, anyway. He was planning to help Nephis kill hundreds of people. Affected by the irony of the situation, Sonny barely stopped himself from laughing. He didn't want to make too much noise. Breaking the table was already a mistake. What if someone comes to check on the commotion? That would be bad. That would be embarrassing. Right. What was he going to do with the body? Instead of coming up with an answer, Sonny leaned forward and threw up again. When he sat straight after a while, the door of the hut was open. And there, in the doorframe, his face pale, stood none other than Castor. With a stunned expression on his face, the proud legacy was taking in the sight. The broken table, the smell of alcohol in the air, the bloodied body with a knife sticking out of its chest, and disheveled Sonny kneeling on the floor, his hands and face smeared with fresh blood. Oh, no. This is not. However, no words came to his mind. No matter what he would say, the situation was not going to appear any better. Looking him straight in the eyes, Castor asked with horror in his voice, Sonny. What did you do? Sonny blinked and stared at the handsome young man. After a few moments, he opened his mouth and said, What do you think? I killed the bastard. His voice was calm and nonchalant. It didn't matter how Sonny felt inside. In front of Castor, he couldn't show any weakness. He didn't trust the proud scion of the Hanley clan one bit. There had always been something off about him. So, if there was ever a time for acting, it was now. Especially because, unlike everyone else in the slum, Castor already knew that Sonny wasn't as useless as everyone believed. He had known it ever since that night when the three of them fought a devil together. Killed the... Why did you kill him? Do you want to read more chapters? Come to Pandanovel. Sonny stood up and shrugged. He was asking too many questions. Castor opened his mind, stunned, then closed it again. After a few moments, he suddenly frowned. What kind of questions? It seemed as though he had realized something. Come to think of it, what was he even doing here? Oh, you know. Do I know Nephis well, what her ability is, how did she get her true name, stuff like that. Without giving Castor the ability to react, Sonny wiped his hands with a bit of seaweed and added, Actually, this guy, Harper, was sent over to spy on us by Tessai. I caught him making a report to a castle guard officer this morning. Castor remained silent for a while, then asked quietly, Do you have any proof of that? Sonny glared at him and raised an eyebrow. Is my word not proof enough? A wild thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Will I have to kill Castor, too? Would he even be able to, if it came to that? Not likely. Why, you don't believe me? Bad, bad. The situation was really bad. Depending on Castor's next words, Sonny could find himself in a sea of trouble. And he was powerless to do anything about it. Anxious and uneasy, he stared at Castor. The proud legacy lingered. After a while, he came inside and closed the door behind him. No, I believe you. Actually, I suspected this kid myself. That's why I came here after hearing that the two of you were seen going somewhere together. But, Sonny. The others might not think the same. He smelled the air and grimaced. I am sorry to say that, but you have a reputation for having a bad temper. With alcohol added into the mix and no proof to connect Harper to the castle. You can see how this does not look good. That piece of crap. Sonny scowled, trying to pretend that he was calm. He saw where this was going. So, what are you going to do? Castor gripped his shoulder. Then, in a serious and grave voice, he said, "What else? I will help you conceal everything, of course. We are comrades, after all. But, Sonny, no one can ever know what you have done here. Especially Lady Nephi's. This will be our secret. All right." Saying that, he looked Sonny right in the eyes. And smiled.